It's that time again. Promise Christian Live is on the air. So glad you could join us. Promise Christian University is the producer of this weekly TV broadcast, and your host is the president of Promise Christian University, Dr. Mike McKinney. And he spent most of his life in God's ministry, and a few years ago he felt God was telling him to start a Christian college, especially geared for men and women who also felt God calling them into the ministry. Well, some of the guests we have on our show have attended this university. Well, let's find out who our host has for us today. Mike?
Thank you, Dudley. Once again, it's great to be on the show, and we want to thank all of you viewers today that view each week Promise Christian Live. And if you're looking for a good Christian university college, we'd love to be that one for you. So check us out on the internet a little bit later. We have in studio today some very wonderful guests that I personally have been wanting to have on the show for a long time, and that is Tony and Kathy Salerno. Nice to meet you folks today.
It's good to be here.
I'm glad that you're on the program today. And when I saw Kathy not too long ago, I said, you know, why don't you come on our program, and we'd love to have you on as guests, and here you are today.
Here we are.
Yeah. Wow, that's fantastic. Well, I would like to have you tell us a little bit about your ministry and what you're doing, and what are the things right now that are very close to your heart today?
Great. We started our ministry in youth ministry, actually, in the Southern California area. Graduated from Vanguard University, and then went straight into ministry. Not knowing a lot about what to do, but letting God lead, and that was very exciting.
Right.
Very exciting times too, because it was the transition time in our country, the late 60s, the early 70s, and there was a lot going on, and so we developed this wonderful youth ministry that moved from within the church to outside the church, which was pretty exciting.
Excellent. Yeah. Wow, how do you feel about that, Kathy?
Going from the church to
Yeah.
the non-church, I was right there with him. So,
very good.
Yes, and the need was there, so that was important that I be there with him. So.
I think it's marvelous. You guys are a team, like me and Adele. I noticed that.
Yeah, I couldn't have done it without her. In fact, she's like they say, she's the better part of the ministry.
Well, I think you guys are super great together anyhow. So what is the ministry that the Lord has brought you into at this point now? I know you were sharing some things before the program today that are really on your heart. So what do you share a little bit
actually,
about that?
we transitioned from as we were saying, from the church into the outside the walls of the church. Started working with young people on the street.
Great.
And found a tremendous ministry there. But we worked a lot at night because young people are nocturnal, and but we had a lot of energy in those days, and so we wanted to work in the daytime too. So we started going into the projects to work with the children.
Oh, great.
And in doing that, we found problems, we found challenges, we found issues that a lot of people didn't know about that were happening to our children. And so we said, how can we reach these children? And we really felt the Lord speak to us to reach them with music. And we started to do music. We hadn't done music ever, but we started to do music, and this music started to reach these kids. Because music is an international language.
Absolutely.
And the music went all over the world, and kids started to really find out about the Lord Jesus Christ.
Marvelous.
Go ahead.
And what is your feeling about that when you saw the children and all that? How did you feel?
Well, it was at a time when we weren't really prepared for what we found on the streets, and so we have such a heart for youth and for kids that this seemed to be the best way to reach them. And I love music. I'm a musician, and I just really felt that that's the way to reach kids, and excellence for God too. And that was one thing that we wanted, was to have excellent music for the kids.
Isn't that wonderful? And as you've said, that music is the international language. And what was the response of the children when you began the musical program? What was their response?
Well, kids love music, so do their families if it's the right kind of music. And if kids sing it, they never forget it. That was our motto. You know,
that's right.
The businesses know that. Fast food places know that. They get those jingles that we can't get out of our mind. And so,
You're right on that.
And so we tried to do the same kind of music, and our music became very important in the lives of kids. In fact, right now, the kids that have grown up and have their own children are asking for the music because they grew up on it and they remember it. I had a letter from a pastor once who said, "I can't stand your music."
Really?
Yeah, that was the first line in the letter, and I thought, oh my, this is not going to be a good letter. And so I started reading it, and he proceeded to tell me why. He said he was trying to fix a washing machine in the house for his wife.
Oh.
And as men do sometimes, they get a little irritated, and he got a little frustrated. And he said he started talking to his washing machine, and pretty soon the washing machine wouldn't respond, and he got angrier at the washing machine. And pretty soon, he said, he just hauled off and kicked the washing machine.
I see.
What he didn't know, his little 8-year-old daughter was watching him the whole time.
Oh, goodness.
And she just said, Daddy, Daddy, have patience, don't be in such a hurry. And she started singing one of our songs to have patience. And here he was, a pastor who had lost his patience, and he said, I can't stand your music. And he was being facetious, but telling us what really happened in his life. So
what an impact it made on him personally.
Yeah.
And the children.
And the children.
Were the example for the parents.
Yeah.
Well, a child shall lead them.
That's exactly right.
Isn't that marvelous?
Yeah.
So now you go into the inner city, or what parts do you folks go into?
Right now we go in both. We go into schools, a lot of schools, elementary schools.
Tell us about
and
that.
We still are doing music. We're doing music based on character, because we found out it's a very good idea, concept that kids aren't being taught today. In fact, we're probably in the 4th or so generation of children, that a lot of them that are being unparented.
Well, that's very, very true.
And so when we go into the schools, a lot of the kids say, well, no one's ever told me or taught me to be honest, or not to lie, or to cheat. And this is the first time I've really heard someone say that. So it affects them very much. And then what we do is try to put the materials in these kids' hands and in their families' hands, so that they can go on and continue on. And that's been a wonderful response.
So your ministry actually is Kids of Character. That's the ministry, right?
Yes, that's the
basically.
program that we have for the kids.
Oh, wonderful.
That we put
So
in.
you have materials, you printed things out for the kids. And
Yeah, we actually did a kind of a foundational book called ABCs of Character, where we go from A to Z with character traits.
Oh, I see.
And the character traits are built on, of course, on God's character.
Oh, yes.
So, but we've gone back in and redefined the words as the original meanings of the word attentiveness, or contentment, or dependability.
Sure.
These are all kinds of things that parents would like their kids to know, but today don't really know how to teach them.
Right.
And so...
this is kind of a basic book. That's what you wanted to do, was a basic book on values.
On values,
so
character.
Nothing more basic than the ABCs.
Oh, that's very true.
So just put a character trait with each letter of the alphabet.
Yes.
And one of my favorites is forgiveness, because forgiving is not just saying I'm sorry or you know, but you have to treat, the original definition says that you treat the offender as though they had not offended you.
I see.
And that's very hard. And I was talking with a principal out in the school, out in the San Bernardino area, and he was saying that that's so hard for the gang members, because it's always revenge.
Yeah.
And so he was very excited for his kids, 5th and 6th grade, to learn that forgiveness is really important, and that it's treating the offender as though they're not guilty and not trying to get revenge. So that was quite an impact.
What has been the response of the school since you guys have gone into the school?
It's very exciting to go into. I think there's a little bit of surprise that the children are so attentive when we talk about this, because kids can tend to be unruly, but this is something that reaches down into their heart. The premise we have is that God's law is written in our heart.
Amen.
And so when we share it, then something happens, it triggers in the life of these children, and they come to us. I had a little girl, actually she was from Pasadena, from one of the schools here, 5th grader, write me a letter and say, this is the most amazing thing. She said, I'm working on the character, and I love, and she was on the first word, I love attentiveness, and I'm really studying it. She said, I've almost read this book 100 times.
Oh my.
Now, it's not that kind of book. It's like Kathy was saying, it's a very basic book. It's a dictionary. We define each word, then explain. We give a little illustration on it.
Wow.
When the kids listen to the music and then read this, they realize, because we tell them these are choices they have to make.
Right.
And you can either make good choices or bad choices, because the choices you make today will affect you for the rest of your life. And they really will decide who you'll be later on. And so we tell them that character is simply how you think or feel or make decisions regarding what is right or wrong, good or bad.
That's right.
And
Very good.
and they respond. They just really respond.
Well, this must have really impacted her heart in a great way.
I had a boy write me, 6th grade boy, and he says, Tony, I'm allergic to books. And he said, but I love this book, you know. And so what we're doing right now, Pastor, is to partner with churches and other organizations to go into the schools and give these materials to the kids, because they can't afford them. And a lot of times we'll get letters and kids will say, this is my very first book, the first book I've ever owned.
My goodness.
I've had kids write us and say, I love this book so much, I want to pass it on to when I have children.
So you provide the materials then for those kids?
Yes, that's what we've done.
Wonderful.
Yes. And we have music to go. So with the 26 character traits A to Z, then we do a song for each character trait. So we have a song on attentiveness. We have one on self-control. We have one on industry, because we feel we should work hard and not be lazy. And so the kids get to sing these songs. We have a theme song called I Want to Be a Kid of Character.
Very good.
And so when we go into the schools...
You guys ought to have your own TV show.
Yeah, we like. But when we go into a school and we teach them this song, I'd like to be a kid of character, they start to sing it. Well, then principals say to us, you wouldn't believe it. The kids later that day are getting on the bus and they're singing, I want to be a kid of character. So we know it's working.
It is working.
Yeah, it's
wow.
working.
The penetration is already in their heart.
Exactly.
Isn't that wonderful? You guys are planting seeds of greatness in these young people and giving them a chance.
And it's not, we have younger people that go into schools. It's not us necessarily.
Oh, yeah.
I understand. You guys are heads of the organization.
We have a band, but it's amazing. Kids, when you tell the truth and truth is spoken, kids respond in such a tremendous way. Well, then the parents respond, because we get to talk to the parents. And we've had fathers say, I've never known how to approach my kid and talk to him about these character things that are so important.
Wow.
Now your materials have given me an opening to go there. But I had one dad actually meet me in person. He said, are you the one that wrote that book? And we said, yes. He said, well, I don't know if I like it. So I've heard this before, you know, from my old music days.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, why is that? He says, well, as I was going through the character traits, and on one night I went through A, and we talked to my son about attentiveness for a while, and then next night we went through B, and we talked about boldness.
Yeah, sure.
He said, by the time I got to the third letter, see, and he said, my son was learning one thing at a time. I started to see the big picture, that our lives should be a life of character. And he said, my life hasn't been a life of character. So he said, this book really started to bother
Probably
me.
brought conviction to us.
That's what we were hoping it would do, yeah.
Sure.
So,
and he admitted that.
He admitted that. Yeah,
took
because
something.
Yeah. And I think the whole idea of going in to schools, public schools with a character base, is that we're breaking up the fallow ground. The Bible talks about breaking up the fallow ground so that the seed can be planted. And so a lot of the character side is that law that's written in our heart, which breaks up the fallow ground and opens these young people up for the seed to be planted of salvation. So that's very exciting with parents.
So
and kids.
these are not just Christian schools, but public schools, right?
Mainly
public. Mainly public schools.
Wow, what a wonderful ministry. And that's great how God's given you folks favor to get into that area. I think it's just fantastic.
And churches love it. And so
we
just did our first citywide. Rather than go into the schools, we actually got the largest auditorium in a city, and we brought the children with their parents and did a whole character conference.
Marvelous.
That was amazing.
How was the response?
Excellent. In fact, one of the parishioners at the church said, we have spent thousands and thousands of dollars trying to get the non-Christian into our church. We've never had this many non-Christians in our church at one time.
Isn't that
so that was pretty exciting.
Wow, that is very exciting.
And then we got to speak with the parents too, because really that's where the breakdown has been, is with the parents. And it's amazing how many principals and teachers say that it's hard to discipline or talk to the kids about character, because then the parents come into the office and they're swearing, or they're acting in a manner that's totally contrary. So the parents really need the character as much as the kids do.
So it ministers to the parents too, as a double edged sword there.
Yes.
I think it's fantastic. And you're doing a great service for the communities because the children today, like you said, they mentioned that things like that are not taught normally today in our modern society, and you're bringing that attention and that type of teaching back. I think it's very fantastic.
And these are things that we were taught as kids all the time. It was part of our
values
learning,
and all that. Yeah.
both in home and at church and at school. And now these children don't really have a home life. A lot of their parents have to work three jobs a day. They don't see them from early morning to late night. So this becomes kind of a mentoring to the child.
How did you first get the vision for this, the burden to do this type of ministry?
I think when we first started on the street and we saw these kids that were doing things that nobody knew about, or they were being abused and the media wasn't talking about the abuse that was going on, we said, how are we going to reach these kids? They don't go to church. They don't learn about it at home. They're not learning about it at school. That's where we really felt the Lord speak into our hearts that music would be the way to do this.
Yes.
And we started to do music that would express these thoughts, and the kids started to sing it. Of course, you can't just do music. It had to be music they loved.
Oh, sure, of course.
And we didn't stop our work with youth either. We just wanted to get to the children while we could talk to them before we had to rescue them later on. You know?
Oh, I think it's fantastic.
But we're working with juveniles too now, and a door is open up to be in a lot of the juvenile halls across the state.
Wonderful.
And so we're getting materials into them
So
too.
you have other people working with your staff then to go into these schools and into the juvenile halls. It's not just you two, right?
No.
Okay.
For the music, we have a group of young people, young teenagers and young adults that do the singing. So they're a great band, and the kids love the band.
Oh, I bet they love it. Yeah,
They do.
sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're doing a fantastic job. I'm very impressed with what I'm hearing today because we see the importance of these kind of things, that we bring that into our setting. And even in our school, we're teaching one of the courses that we ask our theological students is one on ethics.
Right.
You know, that's very lacking even in the church world sometimes.
Yes.
It is.
So it's very important that we have those things instilled.
And transformational character is so important in all of our lives. So
That's right.
this is not just for the school. We've got the home. We have a guide for the parents and grandparents to use with their own grandchildren or their children, so they can go through the guide, take the kids through it, work on it themselves while they're mentoring their kids.
Yeah, that touches their hearts too.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's just absolutely fantastic. So now, in the future, what do you envision for your ministry of Kids of Character? What would be the ultimate thing you'd like to see the Lord do in that area?
We've done a lot of testing. We've been in hundreds of schools, and I think the last 5 years we've been in front of 120,000 children.
My goodness!
But we would like to see this, and it's now about ready to go across the nation,
I see.
and then throughout the world. Because other countries are really looking for materials that teach character. The character
you guys
we all
are going to
believe
go global one of these days.
Well, hopefully God will do something with it, and I'm sure there's others working. God's always got His army of people working,
of course.
and we'd like to see it reach families and young people. We're doing a lot of discipling with young people. So
Wow.
But the exciting thing, Mike, is to partner with churches.
Yes.
And what we're doing is we're going into a church and say, would you like to bridge into the community? Would you like to find a school that's close to you and kind of adopt that school and help them and put a base of these materials in there and start to let these kids learn about character? And churches are very excited about
Well,
that.
for the pastors that are viewing today, we'll have to have you give your website so they can contact you if they're viewing today
we would
and
love that.
would like to partner in with you on that. I think that would be a super idea. Just
we would love
great.
that, yeah.
Wow. Now, I think you guys are impacting the nation because these young people are the future of our country and other countries.
They really are, and it's sad. I mean, when you go in and talk to them and see where they're at. In fact, there are kids that have come to us and said, not only have we not heard these things, it's like we're speaking a new language.
My goodness.
In fact, a child psychologist in one of the schools came to us after we did assemblies in schools and came to us and said, do you know what you're doing? And we didn't know if she was upset with us or not. Yeah. And she said, we said, well, we think we do, but what do you think we're doing? She said, you're bringing a brand new language to our children, a language they haven't heard and they need to hear.
Oh, I love it.
And so these kids come to us and they say, to the band especially, they say, our folks have never taught us not to steal. In fact, they teach us that it's okay to steal because this is a tough world we're living in.
Oh, I see.
And we have to make do. And so there's the reverse being taught. And so when we go, we get some pretty exciting letters from the kids.
I can imagine you do.
Yeah.
Well, now what would you say to our country today about the children? Because you're specifically working with kids developing character, integrity. What would you say to our country today as you look into that camera?
Our children are really hurting.
Okay.
And when people lose that whole concept of character, which is the glue that holds a society together, and that starts to break down, we suffer a lot.
That's right.
But our children suffer the most. If I've done a little testing and been asking people on my own, give me in one word why you think we're going through economic crisis right now. Just one word. I have not had anybody not say to me the right one word, and that's greed.
Oh, my.
Which is a character default.
Yes, it is.
And so we say character is affecting all of us, but it always affects the children the worst. And so our children are suffering, and we need to pray for the children.
That's right.
When the children came to Jesus, and the disciples thought, well, maybe they're not that important. Jesus is busy. They tried to push them away.
Yes.
Jesus stopped them and said, no, don't ever stop the children from coming to me. That was Jesus' heart. It's always been the child.
Beautiful.
So we feel that way. We feel it's affected God because God is weeping over what our children are going through worldwide.
I can imagine the Lord's heart is so touched when He sees innocent children. And,
exactly.
And as you said, unless we become as a child, we cannot even see the kingdom of God.
Exactly.
Well, I think you folks are doing a marvelous ministry. I didn't realize. I mean, I knew you were doing this type of ministry, but I didn't realize how impacting it was and what a difference you're making. I'm very impressed. I think it's just
it's God.
great.
It's really God. It's God's heart,
Yeah.
It's hard because not a lot of people believe in character, but
we sure do. Why don't you give your website out to pastors and churches that may be interested in connecting with your organization?
Kathy?
It's kidofcharacter.com.
Okay.
Kidofcharacter.com.
Very good. All right, kidsofcharacter.com.
No,
Kid,
one
singular. Kid of character.
Oh, kid.
Kid of character. I want to be a kid of character.
Very good.
And we want you to say that. I want to be a kid of character.
I want to be a kid of character.
Because we're all kids in God's kingdom.
We're God's kids. Boy, we need that. I think all of us need that.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that you came on the show today.
Thank you
because
for
your guys are a blessing to not only here locally but around the world too, because it's being influenced. Your influence is reaching the nations, not just our nation.
Oh, thank
and
you.
it will continue to grow, I know. I can see that already in the spirit realm. So it's a real delight to have both of you on the program
Thank you
today.
so
And
much
thank
for
you
having
so
us.
much for sharing your heart and sharing your ministry, kid of character.
Kid of character.
And I think it's so important today. Well, as you can see, folks, we're so glad to have each week bring wonderful guests on, and we're very thankful that they have this marvelous work that they're doing with children in schools and in the neighborhood and in the community. My goodness, Tony and Kathy Salerno. So if you're looking today, Pastor, if you're viewing this telecast today, we'd like to have you get a hold of them and look on the website, as Sister Kathy mentioned a moment ago. And I know that your heart's been touched, as my heart has been touched today. And we know that the children are the future of our nation, and we do have a responsibility in our generation to be that witness and to be that light. As Jesus said, let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify the Father in heaven. We want to thank you for viewing again today. Pray for Promise Christian University. And if you're looking for a good school, we'd like to have you come out to Promise Christian University. We have, for those that are interested, we have theological courses. We have degrees in organizational management, which is a business course. We have counseling degrees. We have degrees in education and chaplaincy. If you're interested in becoming a chaplain, we have a program with that, with General Steve Kirtley as our head of our chaplains department at Promise Christian University. And we're very excited. We'll share a little bit on later programs, but we just returned from overseas, and Promise Christian University will shortly be opening branch satellite schools in some of the foreign countries. So we're very excited about what God is doing. Dudley, again, we want to say we've had a great show today.
Well, Mike, I can't tell you how much I appreciated your guests on the air today. Really inspirational. Thank you. And I pray that today's show was a special treat for you too. There'll be another Promise Christian Live broadcast next week. And in the meantime, may the blessings of God be showered upon you beyond all measure. And in case you want to get a hold of us, just phone 1-888-723-6233. Or if you'd rather write, our email is mypcu@aol.com. Remember, you and I belong to God, and He loves us. See you next week.
Thank you for being on the show. Graduate was 85.
They're the ones that